All right. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited today for this show for a lot of reasons, right? The last time I had a show on purpose centered leadership might have been about 15, 16 months ago. And then life changed and I was doing something else and was on another show. And so I am happy to bring him back this weekly show for now. I'm probably going to do twice per week, but for right now, weekly show. And I couldn't think of a better guest to bring on my first one than you, Georgia. So I'm just going to say, for those of you who are logging on, just let us know where you're calling from or where you're watching from, what city, what state, what country, because I know Purpose Center Leadership has, followers from all over the world. So let us know what country or state or city you're watching from. And we're thankful that you're here for our relaunch of Purpose Center Leadership Live. So put your chat, don't be shy, put your name in the comments when you log in. All right. Jerry's from the Philippines and Kalia's from Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome, Kalia. Welcome, Jerry. All right. Ranmeet is from Cleveland. Okay, to Cleveland. Melissa is from South Carolina. Ernie is from Fort Knox, Kentucky. Lorraine from UK, Bristol. Robert from Texas. Thank you so much for trusting us with your time. Candy from Victoria, Texas. Thank you for trusting us with your time. We have South Africa in the house. I will not try to pronounce that name, but Zim, I'm just going to say Zim for now. We thank you for being here. And we are looking forward to this important discussion on well-being at work. Well-being at work. We are, there's a lot to be said here. And we are going to be asking you guys to participate on this one, to ask questions. My name is Sharon Gill. I am the founder of Purpose Center Leadership. I'm also a executive leadership coach with Sharon Gill International. I have with here my esteemed guest, Georgia Bryce Hutchinson, who will introduce herself and her background. Georgia, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sharon, again for having me on board. My name is Georgia Bryce Hutchinson, licensed marriage and family therapist based in the beautiful state of Florida, warm, sunny Florida. I have a private practice building families according to pattern. I've been active in my private practice since 2019, and I get to interface with individual clients, couples and families who may be dealing with interpersonal conflict or including communication as well as conflict management. A part of what I've been doing over the last 3 years, Sharon, as you know, is that I've been actively engaging the corporate workspace
Yeah.
because a number of the clients that I have coming in, individual clients coming in to see me, they're coming in to deal specifically with issues that's related to work related stress as well as burnout. And I'd shared with you earlier on how I was preempted to start engaging the corporate space because I believe it was about 2 years ago. I had two clients who came to see me within the space of 2 weeks, and both of them were struggling with suicidal ideation.
Right.
One of them had actually attempted suicide 3 times. And so it wasn't just work related stress, it was compounded by their own personal issues. But work was a very, very big part of it: stress, anxiety, depression, all centering work. And I had to give them leave of absences on the spot,
Hmm.
amounting to about 2 months. And then I thought about it and I realized how much of a disruption that possibly was for the workspace. Employers coming in and workers that you saw today, you're not seeing them tomorrow. You're not going to be seeing them for the next 2 months. And I thought it was prudent that it made sense engaging that work environment so that I could amplify mental health literacy as well as really start getting organizational leaders to recognize the importance of establishing or fostering a work environment where the mental health needs of your employees are also a top priority.
Well, I thank you for being here. And of course, welcome to those of you who came on afterwards from the Netherlands and from Georgia and from Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you. And for those of you coming on, please drop your name and your city or your state and your country in the comments. The reason why I wanted you here, because this particular page, Purpose Center leadership page, there, I find that the followers of people who engage with this page, they're very much interested in team and culture, in mental health issues. And so we have leaders on here, we have, managers on here, we have team members on here. And so I wanted to start this conversation because mental health has been destigmatized somewhat. We're not
Yeah,
all the way there, but people are able to talk about it more. And I would like to
absolutely.
have more conversation about it, especially in the workplace. And something that you said in your practice, when you had these two employees came in, they had other personal issues, but the work was also compounding those
Yes, it
issues.
was. Yes,
Always like to say we bring our whole selves to work. And so, as managers, as leaders, we have to deal with the whole self. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'm going to also encourage the audience if you have questions to ask as we go along. So, what are some of the common signs and symptoms of workplace stress, and how can individuals identify them early on to take proactive steps? And before you answer that, one of the questions I want to know is how can leaders and managers identify those, those signs and symptoms?
absolutely. So it's more about observation. But before we even begin talking about observation, I think one of the most obvious indication that something is wrong is if your workers are telling you that they're experiencing burnout or they're dealing with overwhelming work-related stress. So if your workers are reporting to you, they're telling you that I am struggling in this area, then take it for what it is, that it is a credible experience. Typically, what will accompany burnout or work related stress are mood disorders,
Hmm.
particularly anxiety and depression. And so, an individual who is struggling with a mood disorder such as anxiety or depression will be experiencing a number of signs and symptoms. Some of the common signs and symptoms they might be experiencing will include um, persistent feeling of sadness. You know, it's very difficult to even understand why you're feeling sad, but the sadness is there and it's persistent. It's just
Hmm.
consistent. Struggling with concentration, struggling with staying on task, racing thoughts. Perhaps you're beginning to isolate yourself from other people or activities that you would engage that you loved engaging in times past. You're not engaging it as you did in times past. You may be experiencing insomnia, you know, having a difficult time sleeping. Or if you do go to bed, you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night and it's hard going back to sleep because your mind is beginning to ruminate on perhaps events that happened on the day before. You may be struggling with weight gain. You may be struggling with weight loss. Your appetite may be different. You're eating excessively, or you're probably not eating at all, not having an appetite, and just the everyday task becomes very difficult to engage, whether it's work related task or it's task at home, or if you're a student, for example, you're having a hard time focusing on work. So those are some of the things the individual will be experiencing. So those of us who are leaders and managers, there are some things we're going to be observing in terms of signs that an individual, an employee in this instant, may be struggling with work related stress and potential burnout. One of the telltale signs is increased absenteeism or presenteeism. So, absenteeism has to do with people calling out Sharon,
Yeah.
unscheduled requests for time off, or they're just not showing up to work, right? And we're thinking of individuals who have always been diligent with work, have always been consistent. All of a sudden, they're requesting time off quite often, or they're just not showing up. Presenteeism has to do with the fact that individuals are coming to work, but they're barely functioning, right? They're doing the bare minimum. They are doing the quality of their work is going down. They're not meeting deadlines as before. They're not staying on schedule. Everything seems to be disruptive. Their affect is different. The way they're moving, it's different. So they are doing the work, but they're just barely getting by.
I
This,
have
yeah, go ahead.
no, because as we were talking, then this lady, Angel, or lady or gentleman, I'm not sure. Angel said, "Support system is the key. Manage away from the corporate level. Be humble." But when you're talking and all the different things you're talking about, I am wondering, is the average leader or manager equipped just like that to recognize these signs? I mean,
Not necessarily. And
right,
that is the challenge that you have. This
right.
is why reports of burnout are increasing. Number one, because people, as you said, mental health has become a little bit more destigmatized and people are more comfortable opening up and talking. But the reality is, managers and frontline supervisors are not necessarily educated enough to even recognize the signs of burnout. You might notice changes in the person's behavior, right? Their attitude, their work productivity might be decreasing, performance is different. And again, these are individuals who were showing up and they were functioning at the top of their game, and all of a sudden they're not doing it. But the
Hmm.
truth is, many times managers are not aware of it. If they've not been peaked, to pay
Right.
attention to these kinds of dynamics, oftentimes it goes unnoticed. And I mean, the reality is we deal with workers who are exhibiting these signs as though they just are not necessarily interested in the job, and what we typically proceed with is maybe firing them from the job rather
Right.
than considering maybe there is something that's going on with them.
I have a next question for you. In a
Sure.
culture, and we've heard this. Angel says if you communicate on a personal level and build trust, building trust is important, which is what we're
Absolutely.
talking about culture right now. So, in a culture that often values productivity, right? Especially in the American culture, right? I know we have an international audience, but we value productivity and long working hours. How can employees effectively set boundaries to protect their mental health without fear of negative consequences? And I wanted just to add to that. So we now have a remote workforce, right? And it's boundaries can be hard because in one sense you're at home and you're working, and in one sense people want to choose their own hours, so they might want to work at nights, whatever. I have a virtual assistant who is overseas, and so we're on two different time zones. She's 12 hours away, so
Mhm.
we work it out as so that I am not infringing on her boundaries,
Right.
right? And so we can respect each other's boundaries. But here, especially here in the US, how can individuals set boundaries without negative consequences? I
It is a tricky dynamic because there are many things that you will consider. For example, the culture, the workplace culture for one. If you're operating in a workplace where mental health and well-being is not even on the top of the agenda of your leaders, it is going to be very, very difficult. I'm being honest with you. It's going to
Yeah.
be very difficult. If you're working with leaders or employers who they themselves are not even cognizant or aware of what's going on in their own bodies or as it relates to their own well-being, it's highly unlikely that they're going to be receptive to what's going on with you. With that being said, it is necessary to have the conversation. And I know you and I have spoken about this at length, and I'll reiterate it as I've often done, is the idea that there is a cultural and a generational shift that's occurring, and it is changing the way we're doing work. It is a slow process, but it is changing the way we do work. I mentioned how, when we talk about baby boomers and we talk about
Mm.
Gen Xers like myself, we've been trained over the years, way back then, to show up, push through, do what we need to do, get the job done, no matter how much we're falling apart. We've entered into a space now where the newer individuals entering to the workforce, the newest generations, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they operate on a different paradigm. They are about advocating for themselves. They are about asking about, are there programs and protocols and policies in place that's not only there to amplify or protect my physical well-being? Is there something in place to protect my psychological well-being or my mental health, right?
Yes.
So leaders are going to have to for one of a better term, we're going to have to get with the program at some point in time because these are the people who are coming in. They're going to be taking over the workforce at some point in time, followed by the alpha generation that's coming up. So there is a shift that's occurring. And if we don't get with it, as employers or as organizations, you're going to become extinct or you're going to be running into a lot of conflict. It will be difficult recruiting new people into your workspace for whom those things are important, or retaining top talent of those people for whom mental health and well-being is important. So we're
I
going to have the conversation. I encourage my clients, for example, who may be looking for new jobs, that no longer are you just about being in an interview to ask about raises and opportunities for, upward mobility. You need to be having the conversations about mental health and well-being. It is necessary to have the conversations about work-life harmony. It is necessary to ask about the culture. What is it like? Is mental health and well-being a part of the fabric or the mission or the overarching vision of the organization? These things are important. So you set the tone from early, and then you can get to decide whether this place will be commensurate for you and the
mhm.
culture is going to be exactly what you're looking for, or you're going to have to make a decision that this is not going to work.
I agree. Before I take Kara's question or comments, I'm just I'm just addressing the leaders who are watching. Some may or may not be commenting, but I know you guys are out there. When you talk about a multi-generational workforce, which is what we're seeing, baby boomers. I'm the last of the baby boomers myself, and Georgia says she's the next generation down. What's your next? What's your
I'm an
generation?
Xer. I'm a Gen Xer, so I came up the ranks.
She's right. She's a Gen X and the baby boomers. But let me just say, with the newer generation coming in, even me as a baby boomer, I am also, looking at my mental health because I'm realizing that the way how we were conditioned, to,
Yes.
and again, I don't knock it, but we work and we overwork and we
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
we work without even getting paid.
Come in early in the morning, leave the
Early in the
last,
morning,
earliest to come in, the last to leave. Yes.
that's what we were told.
Mm-hmm.
That has had a crushing impact too on mental health.
It
And
has.
so as leaders are considering their workforce, right, in a multi-generational workforce, it is so important, George, and I want to talk to you about this, about possibly in your culture establishing these employee assistance program that we talk about. But before we go into that, Kara said, when you consider employee attendance management, policies more frequently seek termination rather than understanding
Yes.
and accommodation for even people experiencing the most severe mental health conditions. And there's going to be a blowback to this because, Kara, we do agree with your point. Sharita watching on YouTube says exactly 100% in agreement. And again, Lucy's coming from South Africa. So let's talk about, we talk about the culture. And you said a lot there, Georgia, about the multi-generational culture and what the expectations are for boomers. Trace says conversations in the interviews face to inquire about the culture of the organization. Yes. So she was agreeing with you about having that conversation. And so what this does for leaders, managers, employers, this is going to create for you opportunity or problems,
Yes.
right? Because now we have a more informed workforce coming in.
Yes.
They are not shy about it. They have demands and expectation. So you as an employer have a choice. You can say no, and I've had conversations on this page from some of the old guards from the baby boomer generation who says no, people are too flaky now. They're like there's some terms that I've seen on this page where they call them like popsicles or flakes or whatever. Here's the truth.
Snowflakes. Yes.
Snowflakes. Here's the truth. Whether you want to call these people snowflakes or not, they're the ones coming up. So I think it's time for leaders to really stop and look at culture, because we only have to turn the TV on to hear about the mental health crisis. It's people bring their whole selves to work, and it's right there in your workforce. So you as a leader, we want to give you some tools and how you can perhaps start even small with an open door policy, open door conversations, and maybe level up to employee assistance program. But even if you don't have the budget for an EAP, how can you start some conversations? And George, I'd love to have you weigh in on that, because one of the things we have a free download here, which with a highlight from this program and some questions that you can discuss with your team. Have a conversation with your team that perhaps together, you as the leader with your team can begin to change your culture, become more empathetic in your culture. So, Georgia, what are some tools that we can impart, some, some tips and strategies to leaders who are going to be facing this, or maybe already be facing this, and as the previous person said, they fire rather than understand. But
Right.
we can't fire everyone, right?
Exactly. Now, I'll say there's several things I could offer, but I'm going
Yeah,
to offer up two things. I think first and fundamentally is listening to your workers.
yeah,
It is absolutely important that you pay attention to what's going on with your workforce. If your employers are saying to you, this is happening, and if it's not just one individual, it's a number of individuals who are reporting there is immense stress, I am struggling with burnout, then there is something that's credible there. There is nothing wrong with pulling an individual to the side and just having a conversation. I think employees are welcoming of that. In fact, you'd be surprised to know it's almost like you're sick, Miss Sharon, and you decide that you're going to go to the doctor, and somehow therapeutically, just the idea that you're going to the doctor already
yeah,
begins to do something to you. So if
yes,
managers and supervisors are willing to just pull an employee to the side rather than taking extreme measures to, for example, like what the individual pointed out, to fire an individual because they're not producing as they were before, or their quality of work is going down. If especially these are workers who've always been productive, who've always been functioning at the top of their game, obviously something is going on. An empathic leader, a sympathetic leader, is gonna have a conversation. That's the
yeah,
first thing. The other thing I'd like to propose, and this information is available on Google, it's there. Last year, the U.S. Surgeon General in October of last year put out what's called a framework for workplace mental health and well-being. And there are five facets to it, or five essentials they're referred to, that if you're able to identify how your work is set up or designed and it reflects these areas, then more than likely you're going to be helping to mitigate burnout on the work on in your workforce. Um, the framework itself is what it says. It's a
right.
framework. It's a starting point to design. And so the five aspects of it, first one includes protection from harm.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that you're assessing your work environment to ensure that your people are being protected from harm. There is safety, there is security, whether it's from psychological harm, such as bullying or microaggression or sexual harassment, physical harm, such as you give them PPE, gloves, and clothing to protect themselves from working with chemicals, those kinds of dynamic, adequately paying them. That's something, those things are very, very basic. The
Don't go
other,
to point to it. Don't go to, because I think it's just so important. Because Georgia has, created we created a little cheat sheet that we talked about that you can download with those five areas that she's going into. But just the protection from harm, you said, from talk, bullying and PPE gloves and the different depending on your work environment. And when you said that, I think of this. This is so simple, such a simple change that you as an employer can bring to your team, that let them know that you care, you understand, you see them, you're empathetic, you're empathic, whatever, you're a compassionate leader, you're a purpose-filled leader. Just just protecting them from harm. That's it. That's number one. So go to number two. And
number two has to do with connection and community. I've always maintained that I am not necessarily the person who is going to go to work to look for friends, right? But the reality is, we're working in an environment in which we're giving hours of our time, 10, 8, 9, 10 hours, 12 hours. When I worked as an engineer, you worked until you got the job done, especially if you had deadlines to meet. That could be 15 hours in a day. I'm working with individuals. I'm spending more time with my colleagues than I am doing with my own family members. And so the idea is that I want to be working in a space where I feel supported socially.
yes,
There is peer support present. I feel supported by my supervisor. I feel psychologically safe. If I need to go have a conversation with my supervisor, that's something that I can do. If there's an issue, I can have a conversation on it. if there are interpersonal conflicts, arguments taking place and people are not feeling safe in that regard, these are things that we're able to address. So people want to feel socially supported. They want to feel a sense of belonging. We talk a lot about DEI initiatives,
Mhm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. People want to feel as though they are a part of the process, especially when you're making decisions that's affecting them, the individuals. So connection and community is absolutely important. Then he talks about work life harmony, and this is a very, very big deal. Work
Right.
life harmony simply has to do with the fact that I feel as though I give adequate time to work, but then I have adequate time for my own personal life as well. And there's no intrusion, right? So my boss is not sending me text messages after 7. If I'm not working a night shift, after 7, after 8, I'm getting emails, and the expectation is that I'm going to respond. I'm able to leave work at a reasonable time. And when I go home, I'm able to separate myself and start tending to my personal life. So having that level of flexibility and autonomy is a part of what work life harmony is. Scheduling, those people who work and their jobs, it's scheduling, you're scheduled at different schedules. You have predictable schedules. You're not having to drop things last minute because you didn't know your boss was going to be calling you to say come into work, and then your entire life gets disrupted. There's boundary between your personal life and your work life. That is what work life harmony facilitates, and that's very important.
Stay on that point because that email thing, and let me tell you, I when I talk to my guests, I also, look at my own practices, because what I see now when I'm in Microsoft, for example, and I'm sending an email late, it says, "This is after work hours. Do you want to schedule this to appear in their inbox at
Yeah,
7 a.m. in the morning?" So we have options. We have options. And sometimes a boss will say, "I didn't expect them to answer it." The truth is, people are on their emails because they use their emails for personal things as well. So when your email drop in with a problem, it's going to create that anxiety from the
absolutely.
night before. These are
Absolutely.
simple things that you can use. And again, we have a review sheet where you can look at the 5 things that the Surgeon General talked about. But this email thing, when you, the boss, can't sleep and you're shooting off emails at night, remember, people do have their phones with them and they will see it, and it creates anxiety. One of the things, before I move on, Georgia, this young lady said there was an article from Harvard around things that impact your happiness, and one of those was around work life. And Georgia uses the term work life harmony. It used to be called work life balance, but people say there's really no balance. But how can we be harmonious? It still requires boundaries to be set to have that harmony. And then Monique said, bullying is happens a lot in the workplace. Again, something, if you have a true open door policy, bullying would not be allowed, because the minute a bullying situation
Going to be
starts,
addressed.
then you could have gone to your boss. And then this person said here, this is framework is similar to Maslow's hierarchy
It
of
is,
needs.
it is.
It
Whoever said that is smart,
is.
because
It
it
is.
is rooted in Maslow's
Yes.
hierarchy of need. Absolutely.
It is. It is. It is. And then this is a long one. I just read it. Another struggle I've seen as a leader in the workforce and an advocate for mental health is people who want to return to the workforce from a place of being unemployed or on disability, struggling to return because many employers do not offer any type of job protection for those employees until they become eligible for federal mandated protections as FMLA, which can take a year. But by that point, they're verging on termination and are completely burnt out from not being supported,
Um,
etc. It's a long message, so it got a little bit.
Serious challenges in the
Yes,
workplace, and that what that means, Sharon, is that we have a lot of work to do.
absolutely. So you have two more. You have two more recommendations on the Surgeon
I
General.
do. I do. So the other one has to do with mattering at work. And I get excited when I talk about this one because in my former life, this was something that I struggled with tremendously. People want to experience dignity and meaning at work, right? Workers want to feel connected to the overarching vision and mission, and not feel or treated as though they're just cogs in the system. Like all you're doing is just bringing them in to leverage your skill sets, and that's it. People want to know that what they're doing at work matters. They're spending an entire day with colleagues, with employers, with supervisors, with managers. They want to know that what they're bringing to the table, their level of expertise, because if they weren't an expert in what they do, you wouldn't have hired them to begin with.
Right,
So their
right.
level of expertise is making a difference in the workspace. People want to be respected, right? They want
Yes.
to be recognized. They want to be rewarded. I get it. You're paying your people to leverage their skill sets. But at the same time, we said in Jamaica, encouragement sweeten labor. When you encourage your workers through rewards and recognition, it makes a difference to them. And then people want to be adequately compensated and have benefits. This is what makes them feel as though when I show up at my workplace, I am valued and I am appreciated and I matter in this arena. And then the
You know,
final thing, yeah, I'm sorry,
going
go
to
ahead.
your final point, Georgia, again, when you're talking, I'm thinking about this tension between leaders and managers. And it's become so murky over the years, right? Because everyone looks to a leader. Everything is about leadership. Of course, I love leadership too, I coach leaders, etc. However, and I've said on this page, I also believe that managers, if you want to call them managers and not leaders, they need to be adequately
They are
trained.
leaders.
They are
They're leading your workforce.
they're the ones leading the team. And people, I've heard these things. It's not from me. People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad
Yeah.
managers. But managers aren't really bad. Managers are undertrained.
Yes,
That's really what it is. Managers are
absolutely.
undertrained and disempowered.
Yes.
And so, what we're talking about, all of these so far, we've covered four tips from the Surgeon General. That's in your manager's hands, but ultimately it's in the leader's hands, because it's the leader who needs to see this vision and create this culture and have the manager supported and the team. So go to number 5,
Now,
Georgia.
and I'll just pick up on what you just said a while ago about managers. It is absolutely important that an organization you recognize your managers and your frontline supervisors as leaders,
Yes.
because they are leading the team. They're your first line before your staff or your workforce gets to you, right? And so there has to be investment in their development. There has to be investment in their training. There has to be amplifying their awareness of the things that are necessary in terms of their interpersonal relationships with the workforce. Because if the managers are messing up and the workforce is feeling under duress, the workforce is going to leave and
Yeah.
your turnover rate is going to be high. So it just makes sense investing in training in your managers. And then the final thing he talks about, the final essential, number 5, is opportunity for growth, right?
Yeah.
If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of need, as somebody just mentioned a while ago, it's thinking in terms of self actualization. People
Hmm.
are coming into the workforce and they're probably going to be dedicating a number of years to your organization. They're going to be looking for opportunity for upward mobility. So there
Hmm.
has to be a clear path for upward mobility or advancement. And you do that through trainings. And it's not just equipping them to be technically competent, because Miss Sharon, we do that a lot. All we do, we focus a lot on the technical skills.
Yeah.
But some of the things that we also need to be focusing on is interpersonal skills development, because your team will not function. And if your team isn't functioning, if those interpersonal skills are not intact, such as communication,
Hmm.
conflict management, if that stuff isn't working, you don't have an organization, or
Hmm.
your productivity is going to be impacted. So you want to be investing in training in your staff. And then people want to feel they want to have relevant and clear and strategic feedback. So when you're giving your workers or your employees feedback about their performance, be strategic about it. Be intentional, not with the intent of breaking people down, but you're presenting information to them that they have a pathway to. A year from now, I'm in a different space because there is a pathway that's set. I hear what you're saying to me. I see the areas where I need to improve. There's some goals established, and I know for the next 365 years, 65 days, that's what I'm working towards.
Right.
Opportunity for mentorship and coaching. And I'll say to you on this matter, as far as the newer generations in the workforce, they value this thing. They value mattering at work. They value opportunity. They want to get paid, but a lot of them are very much concentrated on being coached, on being mentored, and being developed. And they want to know that what we're bringing to the table is also valuable and important to our organization.
Well, there you have it, folks. I mean, we've given you some tools. I mean, for sure. And again, in this download, we also, have the five steps in this download and some starter questions for conversations. George, you said a lot. You said a
Yeah,
lot right here. That I just want to just like flush out a few of the key things because you mentioned mentorship. You
yeah,
mentioned having that clear strategy. My last two newsletters, the one before today, was on mentorship, the importance of it. And this one today was on having that clear vision. And as you're talking, I'm thinking an employer might be saying, this, I don't know, this feels so heavy because unfortunately, I have worked with with leaders with who still doesn't have a clear vision, right? So it's all murky. So and what you're talking about is so much first personal leadership development,
yeah.
then team development,
Trickles down. Yes.
training. And I am hoping that there may be one leader today who will listen to this broadcast and go back to their team or just do some introspection, and see if up to five things, how on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10, where does your organization check off? It's a really good question to ask yourself. Where are we as an organization? Because this is a Surgeon General's recommendation. So where are we, and what can we do? And we would love to hear from you. Georgia is a corporate mental health counselor. I'm an executive leadership
Consultant
consultant,
and trainer. I do
and
go into organizations and do training on amplifying mental health literacy and building teams. I mean, that's what I do. When I meet with my couples and my families, that's exactly what I'm doing. So it's just bringing it into a broader space.
there you have it. I work with leaders, CEOs, kind of like their whisperer, help them get ready for all that stuff that they need to do in your organization. And so we're going to, that's Monique. Georgia, is a private message for you.
Oh, okay.
I
What she saying?
She said, hi, Georgia, this is Monique.
Hi, Monique. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, and I know some of you guys have been downloading because my phone has been going off. But yes, we do have a document for you that you can it's 2 pages only. The guidelines from the who was it again? The Surgeon
U.S.
General.
Surgeon General framework. Yes.
And then there's
Five essentials. Yes.
5 essentials and 4 questions that you can ask yourself and then also work with your team. Just something for your next team meeting that you might want to consider as you look to create some trainings or some opportunities for growth in your company. Georgia, we want to thank you again for coming on and for educating our people. And for those of you who are on the replay, you can just hit just say click replay. We will answer questions afterwards. And thank all of you from all over the country, all over the world who was logged in, both on, I see folks on YouTube and I see folks on LinkedIn. Thank you guys for watching, and we will be back next Monday with another interesting topic. So until then, take care, and thanks again for your support.